Hello, my name is Neil from Skyway Software, and in this screencast I'm going to give you a really quick demonstration of the Spring Annotator, which is one of the new code assistants in My Eclipse for Spring 8.6. Annotators support annotation-based development by helping a developer understand what annotations are available and in what context the annotation should be used. My Eclipse for Spring 8.6 includes annotators for JAX, WS, and Spring, and in this tutorial I'm going to be specifically focusing on the Spring Annotator, which is designed to help Spring developers annotate Spring controllers, services, components, and repositories. As a starting point, I'm going to use an application that I scaffolded in a different screencast, which is on Spring MVC scaffolding, actually Spring scaffolding, where in less than a minute I scaffolded a Spring MVC, Spring Webflow, Adobe Flex, and iPhone application. And you can other screencast can be found on the My Eclipse for Spring YouTube channel. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up the code that was generated, and I will go down into the web layer and open up the customer controller, which is the controller that was created as part of the Spring MVC implementation in the earlier screencast. So when I double click on the customer controller, what you'll notice is that down here a view will have automatically opened up that shows me all of the different configuration options for what I'm currently looking at in my code editor. And I have a couple different ways that I can navigate it. You can navigate it using this outline view, which I find to be useful. So if I want to navigate to a particular method, I can click on that and it takes me to that particular method. Or if I prefer, I can actually double click on the method name itself, in which case it opens that up in the annotator as well. And what we're looking at here is, let me scroll back up to the top, is what we're looking at here is I have the ability of, if I want to actually annotate the class, I want to annotate the variables, or I want to annotate a method. As I click on these different things, what I will see here are the relevant annotations that are used for a controller, and I can then use this for actually configuring that method. It will immediately make the changes right into my code, and the moment I go ahead and save those changes, they'll be reflected on my file system, obviously. So that's a really brief introduction of, from looking at it from an existing code perspective standpoint. Now what I'm going to do, actually I want to make a little bit more real estate here so we can see this next part. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and create a new controller, and I want to show you exactly how the annotators can help you create new Spring artifacts. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new class, and I will call this foo controller. And in here, for brevity, I'm just going to go ahead and copy in a few lines of code. It's basically just a Java class, 2 import statements, a variable, and a method. And the annotator immediately recognized that this thing is not a Spring stereotype. So if I want to make it a Spring stereotype, I can go ahead from here, specify exactly what it is that I want it to become. So I'm going to go ahead and click on a controller, and you'll notice that it automatically added the controller annotation. And now I can start to configure that annotation by going in here and giving it the name that I want it to be regarded as within the Spring framework. I can also go ahead and configure the scope, and if I'm using a custom scopes, I can go ahead and type those in there as well. The next thing is I can actually go down here and specify a variable, and I can this is a variable that I intend to be injected automatically by the Spring framework, but I need to tell Spring what to use, so that's where I use these Spring annotations, and in this case I'm going to tell it to use it as a Spring resource. And I can go ahead and type in the resource name, or I can use autocomplete and actually have it pull up a list of all of the beans that are in my current project, and then actually have it go ahead and I can pick from there and use that to automatically configure. And one of the things I didn't mention is that you can notice as I added these annotations, the appropriate import statements were automatically included for me, so I didn't have to go and resolve those on my own. The last thing I want to show you is how I can actually use on a method. I can specify here are the appropriate annotations for controller methods. In this case, I want to make it a request mapping, and then I can go in here and say, this is the do that. I want the URL for this to be do that.html. Here are the methods that I specifically want to handle, and then for the parameters, I want the first parameter to be treated as a request parameter, and I want the second parameter to be treated as a model attribute. And then if I want, I can actually go in there and override the name, or do whatever I want. Anyway, that's a really brief example of what you can do with the Spring Annotator. And for the screencast, I only focused on controllers, but the same functionality is available for all of the other Spring stereotypes as well. We hope you choose to give My Eclipse for Spring a try. A milestone version is available today, and you can follow us at Genuitech or at Skyway Software on Twitter, or